You're listening to Jack of All Trades, Master of Nothing, a podcast that celebrates those who do a little bit of everything. We bring together creative people who followed the unconventional path, pursuing multiple trades, sometimes at the same time. So get ready to be inspired. Because as the saying goes, master of none is often better than master of one. Yay! I made it. We made it. Here we are. Jack of All Trades Season 2. We did it. Thank you, everybody, for being so patient for Season 2. It has been a cluster F of a year, as everyone knows. And, I was kind of hoping to start it sooner, but I'm just glad to be here. I'm glad to have some amazing guests lined up for you all. And I couldn't think of anyone better to start Season 2 off with as a guest than Zach Pincince. Now, I actually met Zach about a year ago when I started teaching voice with Emily Kristen Morris, which you guys all know. Season 1, episode 12, I started teaching with her. You can actually hear in real time on the episode her convincing me to come and teach with her through Institute of Vocal Advancement. And during that whole time, I went and I got educated as a voice teacher and really grew my own personal voice business along with working under Emily and her whole TikTok community. So anyway, it's been a magical, amazing, busy experience. And through that, I actually met this next guest, Zach Pincince, because he is my voice student. And he's just the most fascinating, kind, amazing person. He's a world-renowned entertainer, a hypnotist and magician, YouTube influencer and TikToker, and I think soon to be very well-known inspirational speaker. And, hey, a singer. Once this guy puts his mind to something, I swear to God, the world needs to watch out. Today, we really dig into the buildable, attainable skill of confidence. And after hearing this conversation, you definitely will feel the electric buzz of Zach's presence and story. He's an incredible person. Who knows? We actually started the conversation off with his various cartoon impressions and his ability to impersonate any cartoon. So who knows? Maybe he's also the next, animation voiceover artist. But who knows what we'll see Zach do next, but I'm just really excited for you guys to hear this conversation. It's incredibly inspirational. It left me feeling really good. So without further ado, this is our conversation with Zach Pincince. Welcome, Zach, to the podcast. Zach Pincince, right? Is that that's like, I'm saying that right? Got it.
Got it.
Zach,
Nailed it.
I just read it all the time.
There are a lot of different pronunciations that people will take a gander at when they see my name. In fact, a lot of times people will see it and they're just like, how do you say it? I'm like, guess. Make an attempt. I'll tell you if you're wrong. It's okay. I'll correct you. And a lot of times people will get it. They'll be like, Pincince. Like, yes, there you go. I knew you had it.
I just like, I love how they ask you the question, like, how do you say it? And you just say, yes. How do you say it? Yes.
Just try. I try to be encouraging. I'm like, give it your best go. I'll tell you if you're wrong. It's okay.
Give it a go.
But a lot of times people think it's like Pincince. Is it like Italian? Or I've had people guess princess. I'm like, there's no R's. You're not even trying. Come on.
Yeah. I have a name that it's like that's pretty bad if you can't do that. Sarah Bishop. It's pretty bland.
Sarah Bishop.
Yeah, Bishop. Yeah, like I've had, I don't know if they'll just like cut out, they'll just completely Bishop or Sarah. Like, I'm like, really? Like, this is pretty standard, I think.
Well, you never know in the year 2022. It's like that Key and Peele skit, the Aaron. You never know how people are going to pronounce their names.
That's true. Well, anywho, so Zach Pincince, you have a fascinating life. We actually know each other because you're one of my students that, like, ironically enough, I started teaching actually because of this podcast. It's like, Emily, I don't know if you know the story, but this is good to open season 2 with. Basically, during quarantine, like how so many people were just like, we don't know what we're doing. Like, I guess we'll just do this. I started a podcast just to do something, and I invited Emily on because she had this like growing following, quote unquote, of like, I think it was like 100,000, maybe less of followers on TikTok. And I was like, hey, like, she was my little in college. So that's how we knew each other. We went to CCM, which is
Oh,
a
that's so
musical
fun.
theater school. And so I was like kind of sort of mentoring her for like a little bit in college. I mean, sort of like she's like a strong, fabulous individual that does not need my help at all. But like, but like when she was a young like underclassman, like I'd have her over. So she has actually, if you listen to her episode, it's really fascinating. She talks about like her journey with her voice, and like that's her story to tell. So if you want to listen to that, you can. But and then she was like, oh, you know what? I'm like really blowing up here on TikTok. Like, I kind of need help. And I was like, okay. And she's like, you should teach. And I was like, what? Like, it's actually like in time. It's crazy if you listen to it. So who knows what's to come from this? But you're actually one of my voice students, which is crazy ball change. So just that's how we know each other, audience. But let's get into Zach's story. So Zach, tell us as brief as possible, although we have like a whole hour, so you can really get into it if you want. Your history, like growing up, like let's start at the beginning of Zach's story, and then I'll listen and shut up.
Yeah, that's always the generic question. Tell me about you.
Tell me about
your life. Where
everything.
do I be? What do I talk about?
Your early life. The early life.
Yeah. Well, you see, when I was in the womb, it was very dark.
Maybe not that early. Maybe
not that
later.
early. Oh, okay. Yeah, we won't go back that far. No, so I grew up in a big family in small town New Hampshire in the Northeast US. I'm the oldest of 9, so I have 8 younger brothers and sisters, and we were all homeschooled growing up. So the first public school I attended was the University of New Hampshire. College was the first real school. Homeschooling was fine. It was fun. But I always like the joke that homeschooling helped me to be a lot further than my peers academically, and yet a lot further behind them socially, because I didn't have these things that everybody else had growing up called friends. What were those? What is social interaction? What are peers? Like, I had lots of siblings and I had plenty of people to spend time with and hang around with at home, but yeah, socially was a little bit of a struggle. I also grew up very religious, so my family was very, very Christian, and so I was also very Christian growing up as well too. Grew up in church and youth group, and the homeschool curriculum that we used was a very Christian-based program growing up, and so that was sort of my world growing up. I was also really into baseball as a kid, so a big Boston Red Sox fan, being from the Northeast, and so that was sort of my one big hobby while I was in my childhood, was watching baseball games and collecting baseball cards and playing fantasy baseball online. And then when I went to college, I had a whole slew of just different potential career things that I considered. I joined the military actually before I went to college. So I enlisted in the Air National Guard, where I did sort of a 6-year reserve thing where I could join and enlist while I was in college. So I enlisted halfway through my last year of high school, finished out school, took a gap year before college to go through basic training and boot camp and technical school and all of the training that I needed for the military, and then did that part-time while I was in school. But when I enlisted, or rather started, I didn't enlist into college. I enlisted into the military. When I started enrolled into college while I was in the military,
sometimes it
I
might
originally
feel like enlisting in college.
enlisting into military college, right? No, showing up to college was actually a fun experience because I had taken that gap year and done boot camp and basic training, and so I was like, wow, this is just so much freedom. I don't have to wake up at 5 a.m. and do PT and march every day and wear a uniform and always be on a strict, rigid schedule. This is amazing. I don't have to show up to my classes if I don't want to. Of course, I still did, but was the, whoa, no one is watching over me or telling me what I need to do. This is wild. But when I started college, I was originally a computer science major, which is completely far removed from what I do now. I originally wanted to do that because I wanted to get into doing, baseball analytics and become like a fantasy sports analyst and create all of these algorithms to predict baseball statistics and outcomes. And then after about a year, I sort of switched into, maybe I just want to do what I've been learning in my programming classes and be more a traditional programmer and write code and do that. And then the following year, I thought, maybe I want to work in student ministry. I was part of all sorts of religious groups on campus. And so I thought, oh, maybe I want to become a pastor and do that. And so that was what I wanted to do for a little bit. And then I started learning magic, where I just picked it up as a fun hobby. Just after my sophomore year in college, I started doing sleight of hand and card tricks for fun, and thought, oh, maybe I want to be a magician or do magic for a living or for a job. And then maybe I thought, oh, I want to maybe work in student affairs because I was an RA on campus. And so maybe I want to continue to just work in higher education and do something like that. And after learning magic for about a year, I started getting into other types of entertaining and performing, started doing a little comedy, a little bit of stand-up, a little bit of improv. And then that led me into learning hypnosis, which I thought, hey, I learned magic, I learned comedy, why not learn hypnosis too? So I started learning that. And when I was a senior, just picked up some books, some DVDs, watching YouTube videos, just learning very basically like I did with magic and everything else. And after a few months, I was getting really good at it, was really enjoying it. And at that time, I had switched my major from computer science to communication because I was jumping all over the place with different potential careers. I thought, okay, communication makes sense. It's a good, baseline. It's more skill-based versus a trade-based like computer science. And so I was communication at the time when I didn't have a specific job lined up. So I said, I'm going to be a hypnotist when I graduate. I don't know how that's going to work out or what that's going to look like. And of course, my parents were very thrilled with that safe,
very
understandable
safe,
career trajectory, right? But I decided that's what I wanted to do. And so I started working with a mentor at the end of the last college semester. I got certified through the National Guild of Hypnotists as soon as I graduated, which was fun. And then jumped right into doing hypnosis. At that time, when I graduated in May of 2018, I was already 5.5 years roughly into my 6-year enlistment with the military. So it worked out well where I could sort of finish out my term there as I was starting up doing the hypnosis thing, and then just didn't re-enlist in the military, started doing this full time, started making little videos on YouTube here and there, doing street hypnosis where I would just go up to strangers in the park, in the beach, just anywhere that I could find them, saying, hey, I'm a hypnotist, can I hypnotize you? And a lot of people would say no, because it's a very weird thing for a random person to come up and ask you. But the people that did say yes, I would try to hypnotize them. And sometimes it worked, sometimes it didn't. The times that it worked, I would put it on YouTube and start to create sort of an archive of my own work. Because as anyone knows that doing anything for the first time, there's always this weird dichotomy of no one's going to hire you unless you get experience, but the way you get experience is by getting hired. And so how do you navigate that weird dichotomy? And so I thought, well, I'm just going to go do stuff for free and just hypnotize strangers and have videos. That way I can show that I know what I'm doing and then get paid to actually do shows. So I started making a bunch of YouTube videos. And after doing dozens of videos, I was out in LA for the first time, spring of 2019, for an event. While I was out there, I thought, hey, I'll do some hypnosis on the beach. I went out to Venice Beach and did some hypnosis. And the video that I filmed there, posted it on YouTube like I had always done. And it blew up and got like millions of views on YouTube after about a month. And I thought, whoa, this is crazy. It was my first time going viral and it was a fun experience. And from there, got a little bit of a following. From there, got noticed and was able to sign on with an agency who helped me to book shows, which is a big step in my career of actually being able to make good money, being able to do this and make it my full-time job. And then later that year, I started posting on this little tiny app that people might have heard of called Tik Tok that was sort of blowing up on at the time, and started just posting videos from my YouTube channel that hadn't necessarily gone viral on YouTube, but I thought, hey, they're still funny videos. People should still see them. And so I started posting clips of them on TikTok, and they got the attention that they deserved on TikTok and blew up there. And I had literally the first couple of videos I posted got a few thousand views, where that was what my videos would get on YouTube with an okay sized following. And thought, whoa, this is cool. Like, I'll keep posting. Literally a week and a half, I had a video that got like 1.5 million views. And I was at 100,000 followers after 2.5 weeks of joining TikTok. And I thought, what is going on here? This is insane. So kept posting, kept uploading videos and clips. And I think I passed 1 million followers in just under 2 months since joining the app. And it was just so crazy. That was not expecting that at all when joining it. And so continued to post and eventually moved out here to LA at the end of 2019 and got the opportunity to work with a bunch of other people who were big on TikTok and YouTube. And my followers were growing, the opportunities were growing. Beginning of 2020, I was like, this is gonna be my year, all these opportunities, all these fun things. And then this fun global event happened in March that just forced everything to stop and halt and slow down. And from there, I couldn't go do shows and perform and travel around and hypnotize strangers. And it was weird to even be within 6 feet of a stranger, let alone trying to hypnotize them. And so there weren't really opportunities to do all of the things that I was doing with hypnosis before the global pandemic. So I was sort of in this state of, well, what do I do now? Just like everybody else was in the country, sort of twiddling their thumbs, waiting for the world to open back up again. And so I decided, why not take advantage of this time and learn a new skill, have something that I can do in all of this free time. And I thought, I've always enjoyed singing. I've always enjoyed doing karaoke for fun, even though I was terrible at singing and couldn't sing at all, couldn't hold a tune or match pitch. But I've always enjoyed doing it and singing along in your car like, you like to do. And so I thought, why not just try to learn and become good at singing? It's a skill like anything else. And if I put in the time, I have all of this time. So why not? So literally just a week or two after the pandemic started, early April, I decided I'm just going to sing an hour a day, do like 30 minutes of vocal exercises, warm-ups, do 30 minutes of just karaoke on YouTube. It did not sound good, but that didn't stop me. I was like, hey, it's a skill. The more I do it, the better that I get. So I just started doing it every day and just kept that daily streak up. Once I had a little bit of momentum, I was like, I can't break my streak. I can't stop. I'm a month in. I'm 2 months in. I'm a couple months in. I'm over a year in. So I just kept doing that every single day, an hour a day for weeks on end, months on end. And then towards the middle end of last year, I decided, I should start doing lessons. I should find somebody to teach me that would be fun and that would help me to enhance my progress versus just singing on my own. Like, it was helping my voice get stronger, but being able to actually have specific training and instruction that would help me to actually grow. So enter Sarah Bishop to help give me all of the amazing guidance that I have received over the past several months to become much better at singing. And who would have thunk that my progress actually grew so much faster when I had a teacher and instructor to help me to become much better than I was clearly before I started, but even just doing the hour a day. And I've still been doing my hour of singing a day for over 2 years now.
Yeah.
Close to 800 days in a row, probably at this point. So
Zach's got
it's been a fun journey.
You're like a tally on your wall,
right?
like day 345 of singing. Just check that off.
I'm singing every single day. But yeah, that's sort of the abbreviated life story journey that has led to how we met and where we are now in early 2022, as we are filming almost to the midpoint of 2022. Actually, this year's flying by.
Yeah, May was like, I'm sorry, what? It's over? Like, I was like, I don't understand.
I was chatting with a friend yesterday where I was saying something like, oh yeah, that's not till the end of the month. I was like, wait, it is the end of the month. What is going on?
Yeah, actually, like, it's crazy. And I know, like, as you get older, I guess, in perspective to how old you are, like, time goes quicker, because like a year when you're 5 is like 20% of your life, right? But if a year when you're 30 is like way less in comparison to the span of your whole life. So I guess that's the overall consensus on why time seems to speed up. But like, at 30, if I'm like, I'm not 30 yet, I'm almost 30, but I don't know why I'm jumping so on to the big 3-0 here. I'm like, I'm 30. I'm not. But
enter Tik Tik Boom.
Enter Tik Tik, like,
it's
actually
90.
I'm excited to be 30. I clearly, I just feel like so over the BS of my 20s. Like, it was so hard. 20s are hard. Like, you're 28, 27. 27.
Oh, yeah, I'll be 27 in a few months. 27. So 26 right now. Yeah.
I was close. 26.
26 and 3/4.
So I'm what, 2.5 years older than you, I think, because if I'm 20, I'm 29 and a half now. So, and wait, what day's your birthday? When are you?
August 3rd.
Oh, I'm gonna be like one of those like red flag girls. Wait, are you a Leo?
Well,
Listen, I think astrology's cool. But
yeah, I don't like live and breathe by
It's
it.
fun. I don't think it actually holds any value to predict anything with any sort of scientific relevance, but it's a fun thing to kind of mess around with sometimes.
Yeah, I mean, I think
And
that
like, I'm a Leo. I don't think that means anything or carries any
I mean,
real significance,
to
but I'm a
people that
Leo,
know
sure.
that know, I think I'm not that familiar with it. I know that people that are really into it, like really read into it, and they do a bunch of research on it. I'll look at the placement of the stars, and I don't know. It's a lot. It's a lot of work to understand. But I know Leos love to be in the center of attention, and they love like performing and like being kind of the leader. So that makes sense to me as much as I understand about Leos. But
It makes sense now within the past few years of my
yeah,
life, but not in the first first 20 years at least of my life, where, like I mentioned, I grew up in a big family, was homeschooled, was a shy introverted kid. That was part of the reason I decided on computer science, because it was a great job where I could sit behind a desk and not have to be around people, and
yeah.
was a good job for me. And then I graduated as a communication major, performing in front of crowds for a living. So a little bit of a shift happened
Yeah,
in
I
college.
want to like that's I'm kind of basically what I was saying with the horoscope thing was like I can't believe like at 80 like how quick our life is going to be compared to 30, but like I want to get back into this. So I like took some notes as we were going along and just like wrote down basically an outline of your life. I
An outline from my outline, yeah.
here, Zach, I'll send you homework of the outline of your own life.
Oh, okay.
But I
Imagine I fail. Oh
imagine.
no.
Oh God, I
I
didn't.
failed quiz on my own life.
I think
Yeah, you're
that
like, wrong. You actually like this as a child. Ah.
yeah, you're like actually yeah, yeah. I want to get into like the transitions. Is a lot of what we talk about on this podcast too is about kind of one's own process towards growth and like kind of what leads them into the next thing, or like especially if they're like super successful or if they reached like a platform of a lot of people, or they're like they change very drastically from like maybe their original nature. And it seems like almost you've stepped into yourself, kind of the process of which that was of like, okay, Zach's deciding that, this is actually what I want to do, and then taking the steps to become that kind of person. Like what when you were younger, like did you always dream about being like in the limelight and be like orchestrating huge performances in front of crowds, and like was that something that like crossed your mind, or like was a part like secretly what you wanted to know, like what it's like, so go into it, I want to
No,
hear.
not at all. Yeah. No, so yeah, I was just a very shy, quiet kid growing up. And like I mentioned, college was sort of the big shift. But I think it came from experiences that I just had. It wasn't always that, cookie cutter movie. I had a dream since I was a 5-year-old kid, and that dream was always inside of me, and now finally can blossom into the flower it was always meant to become. Like, no, that dream just happened upon me, or I happened
Yeah.
upon it, whatever that looks like. So even with hypnosis, I had never even seen hypnosis, wasn't even familiar with it, had no idea it was even a thing outside of just a false way it's portrayed in movies, till I was a freshman in college. I saw a show for the first time when I was a freshman there. And, I would like to say that the moment I saw that show, I knew that's what I would do for the rest of my life, and I would graduate and become a hypnotist. Not at all. If you had been sitting next to me at that show and you sort of leaned over and said, hey, this is what you're going to do when you graduate, I would have thought, you are insane. Why are you in college right now? But I still thought it was amazing. I thought it was so cool. I thought, wow, this is incredible. This is awesome. So I would always go to the hypnotist shows or the magic shows or the comedians that would come on campus. Again, no clue that that's what I would want to do or even be doing when I graduated, but I just always thought it was fascinating and interesting and fun. But it really was just the opportunity to sort of just meet all sorts of different people and again sort of be social in a way that I never really had the opportunity to do when I was growing up. Of course we still did these homeschool co-ops and these things here and there where I would still meet kids my age, or of course growing at church and youth group and Bible study classes. But those were all people that were within my own circle, right? It was all their kids who were homeschooled, or other kids who were Christian, or kids who looked like me and thought like me, and that were just within my bubble of my very small worldview. So being in college and being able to be around all sorts of different people and make new friends and be just exposed to a lot of different things, it sort of horizoned my perspective on what was possible or the different things that I wanted to do. And like I mentioned, I sort of flip-flopped what I wanted to do several times throughout college, whether it was a baseball analyst or a programmer or a pastor or a higher education or a magician or a hypnotist or all these different things that I sort of experimented with, which I think is, the point of college, right? People go in with all this pressure of, I have to know exactly what I want to do for the rest of my life. But for me, I looked at it as an exploration where it's okay that I don't know. It's okay if I don't even know when I graduate. I just want to learn more about who I am and sort of discover myself in that time. And it shifted many times throughout my 4 years in college. And yet I'm even the person that I was when I graduated at the end of or middle of 2018, 4 years ago, is still pretty different from the person I am now, even just a few years later. And so it was just that process of being exposed to new things, being willing to try new things. I was a part of a bunch of different student organizations on campus and just tried a lot of different things. And for me, a few of those stuck, and a few of those sort of piqued a curiosity where I thought, I want to try just this idea of magic or comedy or eventually hypnosis or whatever it may be. But even just the idea of when I learned those skills and realized that, I wasn't a magician, but I could learn that skill. I wasn't a comedian, but I could start doing it and become that. I sort of had this idea of, well, anything can be a skill if you just put in the work and the time to do it. But that also, included in that was also just a personality and who I was, and sort of this idea of confidence. And for me, always being sort of this shy, introverted person, thinking of all these movie stars or celebrities who are really confident and sort of have this great personality. Well, if I can develop these other skills, confidence is a skill as well. And so I just started watching just different videos on confidence on YouTube and reading different books on personal development and self-help, and sort of started to create this persona of, I don't have to just be that person that I always was, or that person I was as a kid where I was just this shy, quiet nobody, but I could really step into my own, and I could really sort of embody and become a confident person. And sort of while I was doing that at the same time as I was learning these stage skills like magic or comedy or hypnosis, they sort of married together where it sort of gave me that inspiration where, I can step into doing this as a full-time performer. And it was intimidating because I had never done anything like that. But as I was sort of learning these new mindsets about confidence and about being successful, I thought, I have no idea if this is going to work out, but I do know that if I don't try, I will regret not going for this opportunity for the rest of my life. And there's this quote of, the pain of risk is always a much better pain to be willing to take than the pain of regret. And you ask anybody who is in their 80s or their 90s and in the last few years of their life, they're just filled with all of these regrets. But most of the regrets are not the things they did, because they understand the things they did shaped them into the person they are today. But the regrets are always the things that they didn't. I wish I had tried this. I wish I had followed my dreams. I wish I had asked that person out. I wish I had committed to this, or whatever it might be. And so for me, sort of at that time, as I was sort of learning these, not only skills, but also these mindsets to develop the skill just within myself of becoming a better person, I sort of just took that forward into, well, I don't know what this is going to look like or how this is going to go, but I'm willing to step into that uncertainty to take that risk. And it certainly paid off and is continuing to pay off. And even now in 2022, I know that there are still a lot more things that I will learn and discover and become as a person that will be far different than the way I am now. And I always like to look at sort of this idea of maturity or growth is just realizing that the previous version of you was an idiot, right? Like, and I can look back on the previous version of me and I can, realize that I was where I was at that time, and that was all that I knew, and that's okay. And I can still respect the person that I was at that time. But looking back, even just a year ago, Zach, from 2021 instead of 2022, like, man, that guy was an idiot. He knew nothing. I've grown so much in this past year, and I've become just a stronger person, a more confident person, developed in my skill set and my knowledge and who I am as a person. And I know in a year from now, in 2023, that Zach's going to look back on the 2022 Zach and be like, that Zach was an idiot. He thought he knew everything then. And yet you've since learned so much more than you did at that time. But that's just part of life, right? There's a classic saying that goes, if you're not growing, you're dying, right? You're going in one of two directions. You're going up or you're going down. And so just this constant progress of always moving forward, of always being willing to grow. And so that's sort of just been the story of my life, is just always pushing myself and challenging myself to go forward and try new things and try new skills and see where they take me and not be afraid of failure. That was sort of one of the mindsets I developed early on, was that, I can't fail, because I will either win or I will learn. And both of those outcomes is beneficial. If I succeed and it goes great, then great, that's what I wanted. But if I don't, there are always lessons that come from the opportunity of failure. Failure is not true failure. Failure is just a lesson. And if we go into any opportunity understanding that it will succeed either way, because it will either go the way we want or we will learn something and become a better person from it, and there's no reason not to try new things, because both outcomes are beneficial.
Yeah, I think that's fascinating, the way that you just have this like ability to basically step into an unknown outcome, but like you're like, oh, I'm just gonna follow my gut, we're just gonna do it, we're gonna commit to it, and like it doesn't really matter what happens, right? It's more of the actionable step of just committing to it fully and trusting that, and then not worrying really about where it leads. Is like, I've been kind of into like, there's like manifestation practices and all that kind of stuff, and like kind of studying that and asking people about that and how they get to where they are. The number one connection is that people in general, they don't get too attached to the outcome, and they're just like, you know what, I don't know a lot of things, but I do know this, like with the regret thing that you just said, I got to try. Right. And I remember in my life feeling that way, and things would flow a lot easier when I decided that I wanted to do theater, like my senior year of high school. Like it was super late compared to most people. And I had to start right away and just like get all my audition stuff together, because like the whole audition process for college for musical theater is literally insane. It's like almost harder than getting into like an Ivy League school. It's insane.
Oh, man.
And so when you're doing it, yeah, like I was like one of 8 girls that they accepted of like thousands of applicants.
Wow.
So it's crazy, right? It's
But you did it. Congratulations.
I did it. But you know why I did it? Because I didn't know what was going to happen. I didn't care. I was like, I remember the moment in physics. I was a smart kid, but not like, I just like studied a lot. Like I wasn't necessarily a kid that like absorbed it naturally, but like I'd work hard to remember things and I'd have to really study. And so I remember having like everybody, like the physicality of it, everybody's head was down in physics. We were supposed to be taking a test or something, and I clearly didn't care. And I like had my head up and I was just like, you know what? I can't do that for the rest of my life. I can't live my life with my head down like that. Like I'm going to do what I want to do. And it was like this eureka moment of like, I'm going to do this. Like, no, I'm really going to do this. And then from there I was like, I don't know how, but I guess I'll figure it out. I don't know how, but I guess I'll figure it out. And, but when I got in trouble was when all of a sudden I had actually started to work professionally. Then I got afraid, because it was like, wait, is this it? Like, am I at the top of my thing? Like, wait, like, how do I move forward from here? And maybe I had some realizations of things that I didn't necessarily like about it, like kind of taking off the rose-colored glasses of the dream and starting to do it and being like, wait a second, like I don't feel respected. I don't feel like I'm paid enough. I feel like I'm working really hard and stopping my whole life. And is this it? Like, this is, and so from there I was like, well, I must need to be super successful. I must need to be famous. So then I put all this pressure on myself and then hid. It was just fascinating. It was like, I let go of that freedom that you're talking about of like, yeah, who knows? Who cares? Right? It's my life. It's your life. Like we're meant to live it and experience and have fun and explore. But as soon as you start kind of plugging into the rules of like, no, this happens from A, B, C, this is how this happens, and you're not open to it really unfolding, you start to block yourself, because you're not seeing the avenues in which things are going to connect. And it wasn't until 2020 for me that I I just sat down and was like, I literally cannot keep doing this. I was like depressed. I was burned out. I wasn't doing good work. I almost had a nervous breakdown like right before 2020 happened. Like I'm a person that's like super sensitive to other people, and just like I knew that something was up. Like I just was like, there's something fucking wrong like right now and before 2020. And it was like I could feel it in my body, like it just wouldn't release. And finally, like as my dad called me and was like, I'm gonna come pick you up, I'm gonna take you, like, and I was like, no, it's fine, like I'll just stay, this isn't gonna be a thing, right? And then like the next day it was like declared a national emergency, and I remember he like drove down. We were afraid that like tanks were gonna like block off the bridge. Wow. Like it was like, it was very scary in New York. And my dad like drove all the way from Pittsburgh and got me. And I remember like as soon as I was crossing the bridge, I like felt, it was like, you never have points in your life where you feel like a chapter has closed.
Yep. And you don't realize it until the chapter's closed and you're like, oh, yeah.
Yeah, until you feel it. Like, you're like, wow, like, wait, okay, that was that. And it was like a whole new beginning of, like, I could literally feel it lift off of me as I like drove over the George Washington Bridge. So it was just, you know, it's nuts. And it's cool hearing you say it, because you say it like every other, like truly actually successful, but success via like happenstance. Like it's not like you're out to like have fame, you're just exploring your own life.
It's sort of there's a cliche quote that goes, the harder I work, the luckier I get, right? And there are certainly opportunities that have happened in my growth where I did experience some luck, and yet it was partly because I was able to put so much work into trying and putting myself out there. Like I mentioned, one of the first big catalysts into helping me to become a full-time hypnotist was that I had a video that went viral on YouTube. But it wasn't just like, I posted a video for the first time and it blew up and millions of people loved it and I was famous. It was posting dozens of videos that nobody cared about. And I have friends who have done that, and they've posted hundreds of videos until they've seen success. So it happened a little bit quicker, but it was still months of posting on YouTube where nobody was watching and nobody was caring, but I was still doing it anyway. I was still willing to, I'm going to post the next video. I'm going to post the next video. Eventually it will happen. Eventually it will happen. And having faith in that process. And eventually, you know, I had that sort of lucky break or whatever you might call it. And yet it was because I was able to just keep persevering through that uncertainty, right? The results didn't happen, but I sort of had that faith that they would happen eventually and it was going to happen. And I think one of the things you mentioned earlier too, of this idea of there's still all these struggles in what we're doing. And even as we're following our dreams, there are still these problems and there are still ways that we're discovering ourselves for these different challenges. And I think people often think that if they go after what they want, it will get rid of their problems, but it really just gives them a different set of problems, right?
Yep.
Life is uncertain. The only thing that's certain about life is that it is uncertain, right? And that nobody could have predicted or expected a global pandemic that would shut the world down for almost 2 years, right? And so nobody was prepared for that. And yet, I think success is not necessarily about avoiding problems where your life is perfect. It's just about being able to have better problems. It's being able to pick your problems. It's being able to say, instead of having the problem of just working a job that I hate and feeling miserable and like my life has no purpose and that I don't have any direction, it's the problem of struggling through and being that starving artist and really being able to put your heart and soul into something that you love and being willing to keep going even when you don't have the recognition yet. And both of those are problems, but they're different types of problems. And so for anybody that exists and anybody that is just a human being in this thing called life, that's sort of the question that we all have to ask ourselves is, what problems do I want to define my life? And how do I create a life where I am going after those types of problems? Again, success isn't about not having problems. It's about having better problems. So what problems do you want to be a part of your life, and how can you live your life in a way where those are the problems you face instead of the ones you might be facing now?
Yeah, it's like balance too, because, which I kind of hate that word, but it's like true. It's so true with like voice studying and everything. But it's like I'm a person that like will see the goal, and if I'm not careful in controlling how hard I am on myself, or if I'm not careful in a way of making like kind of just having like blinders on, which is like helpful sometimes, right? Like that kind of like, I'm gonna get it, I'm gonna work, right? Like that's good until you're not tuning into like, wait a second, like there's a window open over there And, you know, you need to trust, like you're saying, this instilled faith of like just kind of taking the next step. Like, I think part of the reason why I got so effing depressed, which I think people can hear remnants of actually in the last season of me, like, actually the podcast like helped me like come out of it and like ask people about it and like move forward. But the problem also was like kind of what I mentioned before is like, if you're not open to you have the discipline, right? There's a couple ingredients. You need the discipline, you need the passion to keep going, but you need to be open. And because I was like, there is one success, there's one way, how do I get that? That is it, right? And that like made me sad because I felt like I was just dog paddling in my own life, right? I'm like working really hard, but nothing's happening. Why isn't this happening? And then I lost faith. Like what you've been doing is you're holding on to faith. You're like, I know, I trust, right? And that's enough. But if you for like a second, let go of that, and you're not reminding yourself, and you're not bringing yourself back, and you start listening to other stories and other voices about, you know, maybe it just doesn't happen for you. Maybe it just doesn't happen for some people, which is honestly fucking poison. I mean, I'm going to say the F word for that because it's true. If you let that happen, that's going to just spread. Like you have this beautiful garden of opportunity and you let freaking weeds grow in your garden and you got to take them out. Like so like this kind of brings me back to the point of like, I know you're talking about building confidence. You did research. It's a skill. It's something that you've practiced. Like I'm kind of in the process of like recovery in a sense of myself and have been for the past since 2020, right? Since I crossed the George Washington Bridge. And there was like a year of just grief. And then there was a year of stepping into trusting there was possibilities. And now I'm kind of in the confidence phase where like, what's your practice of like, I mean, if this is too personal, you don't have to answer it, but like, what are things that you've done like actively besides just reading? Like, how have you practiced that confidence and practiced that skill set?
Yeah, I think there's only so much learning you can do from like book learning, right? You can learn so much from reading books, but as the cliche goes, right, you can read dozens of books on riding a bicycle, but until you actually get on that bike, you can't really say you know how to ride a bike, right? You might be able to understand it conceptually, but until you do it, that's when that skill really becomes integrated into who you are. So especially as I was learning all of these skills like confidence, I understood conceptually that I should put myself out there and that I should have this mindset and have this mentality. But it wasn't until I started actually doing it that I was able to develop that skill. And even something like with hypnosis, for example, when I was learning it and putting myself out there and doing street hypnosis, the first time that I tried to do street hypnosis, it didn't work at all. First time I decided I wanted to learn hypnosis, I picked up a DVD. I said, I'm going to watch this DVD. I'm going to finish it by the end of the week. It was like a 5-hour instructional DVD. So I watch an hour a day, Monday through Friday. Friday, I will go out and I will have hypnotized somebody. I didn't know if hypnosis was legit. I didn't know if the DVD was going to be successful enough at teaching me. I just sort of set that goal in my mind that I will do this. It's just done. It's going to happen. So I go out that Friday afternoon. I was doing some street magic with a friend anyway. So we were doing some card tricks for people around campus. So I thought, oh, this is perfect. I'll just do some card tricks and then ask people if I can hypnotize them. So I do some magic and then I ask, hey, can I hypnotize you? I've been learning hypnosis. And the person said, sure, why not? So I do it and nothing happens. Nothing works at all. Not even a smidge. It just didn't work at all. So I thought, well, that's okay. I'll try it again for the next person. Next time, do some magic. Ask, can I hypnotize you? I do the things that I was taught in the DVD. Nothing worked again. Not at all. A third time. Nothing worked at all. And at that point, I'm starting to be like, is hypnosis even legitimate? Is the DVD just, was it just a bogus DVD? Like, what's going on? And even my friend was trying to be nice of like, hey, maybe you want to just stick to the magic, stick to the stuff that's working, the stuff that is going to perform. But I was just set on that goal. I told myself, I will hypnotize somebody. I don't care how long it's going to take. Next person, I tried it, didn't really work. The fifth person I tried it on, it worked a little bit. One thing worked and a second thing sort of worked partially. But in my mind, I was like, I did it. I hypnotized somebody. I checked that box. I accomplished that goal. And I finally pushed through all of that failure to achieve that success. And now I could have just kept reading and learning and trying to get better intellectually, but until I actually put myself in that opportunity to actually experience that and be willing to fail, willing to learn from that failure, that was when I experienced that growth. And people often ask, oh, how hard is hypnosis to learn, right? Is it a skill? Can anyone learn it? How do you learn it? It's not that difficult of a skill. It's talking, it's communicating, it's sort of guiding people into this mental state where their experience becomes their belief becomes their experience. But the hardest part of learning hypnosis is there is no way to practice it other than doing it. With magic, I can practice a sleight of hand or card trick in my room hours and hours on end until I feel comfortable performing it. With singing, we can sing in our room as much as we want until we're ready to go up on stage. With hypnosis, the only way to hypnotize someone is by hypnotizing someone. There's no way to practice that without actually trying it. And so there's sort of just this immediate leap that you have to take to be willing to learn from that. So that was sort of that big hurdle of bypassing just it's a conceptual idea. It is just me being forced to put myself out there. Even I think about it as a year or so before I was learning hypnosis, when I was still doing magic, I was watching a lot of YouTubers who would do street magic style videos. And so I thought I should go out and do street magic. Before I ever learned hypnosis, before I ever did street hypnosis, I thought I should go up to somebody and do street magic. That would be fun. And so I was meeting up for a friend at the mall for lunch. So I thought, oh, this is perfect. I'll get there a half hour early and I will perform some street magic for people in the mall. And so I get there, I have my deck of cards. I'm just walking around. I probably just look like such an idiot just walking around holding a deck of cards, just walking around the mall all by myself. Like, all right, gonna find somebody to go up to and ask if I can show them a magic trick, just walking around. Yeah, right? Just weird. Yeah, what am I? See some card tricks. Yeah, is this your card? But I end up walking around the mall for 30 minutes without approaching one person. I had that goal in my mind. I knew what I wanted to do, but I still just couldn't bring myself to do it. I just kept chickening out every time I saw, maybe they'll want to see it. No, they don't want to see it. No, I shouldn't do it. And so I then sort of was kind of defeated. So I went and got lunch with my friend. And then afterwards, I was like, well, I still set this goal for myself. I'm not leaving this mall until I do it. So after lunch, I said, hey, I'm going to stick around at the mall. Like, I'll catch you later. So I walk around, again, proceed to walk around for another 20 minutes. Again, just chickening out, getting scared, not going up to people. Then I finally saw a group of just some students that were just hanging out, literally doing nothing, just sitting on their phones, just bored. And I was like, if this is the perfect group, I have to go up to them. So I just awkwardly hey, do you want to see a card? And they're like, yeah, sure. So I do 1 or 2 tricks for them and they were impressed and it went well. But it was just pushing through that resistance, pushing through those mental blocks of the second guessing and the doubt and just forcing myself to do it. And then when I did it, I was like, hey, that wasn't so bad. I could maybe do that again. And that sort of just is a good example of just the way that my life has been in any skill that I wanted to learn, whether it's hypnosis or magic or singing or confidence or whatever it may be. It's being willing to push past that resistance, because the truth is that the worst case outcome is always the story we tell in our head. It's never as bad as we think it's going to be. We always are able to get through any negative outcome. Think about anybody listening to this, you've made it through 100% of your worst days. The situations that you thought your life would be over if it happened this way, whether it was just a breakup or a catastrophe or somebody died or just a tragedy that might have happened in your life. You might have thought about that before it happened. If this happens, my life is over and I don't know how I can get through it. But you did. And you're here and we're here. And the worst case outcome is always the outcome that happens in our head. It's never as bad as we tell ourselves it's going to be. But it's just that initial resistance of being willing to push past that self-doubt, push past that resistance. Sort of a self-hypnosis in a way where we're not allowing our thoughts to take control of our actions, but we are the ones that decide to take control and say, I am going to do this. No matter how many times I fail, I'm going to try until I succeed. Or I know this might turn out poorly, but I'm going to try anyway because there's still a chance that it won't. There's still a chance that it will succeed. And it's that combination of, you have to know what you're doing, right? So you have to learn from the books or the videos or the mentors or the teachers or wherever you learn from. But the most important step is always converting that knowledge into action, right? That's how knowledge becomes wisdom, is you add action into that mix of knowledge, and it becomes that wisdom. It becomes that embodiment of that skill or that talent or that mindset that you want to learn. So for me, whether it was magic or hypnosis, singing, whatever it might have been, it was sort of just that mindset that I have to be willing to put myself out there. I have to be willing to try. Again, I have to be willing to fail, but I also understand that failure is not a bad thing, because I will either win or I will learn, and both outcomes are beneficial. And so it was sort of just that mindset of the worst case is always in my head. I can't fail. Put myself out there. I'll try until I succeed. And that sort of led me to where I am today.
Yeah, it's cool because like this kind of brings up like with hypnosis, it's like, I'll probably ask you another question about this before we wrap up here, just like in regards to like specifics of hypnosis, but like it very much plays into our life is, how much power our brain holds in our actions and how much power our own opinions about things have on our outlook of the world. I've personally used hypnosis. I think I've mentioned this to you before, but like it's really changed my life in a way of helping my mental health and stability. So like with the practice of doing it over and over and over and over and over again, right? Because it's like learning a skill too. Like I'm relearning how to operate from a healthier place in my brain, just like how I teach you with voice. Okay, let's operate from a healthier place in our voice. Like how can we allow more airflow, right? To have the sound travel. Like how can I allow a more pleasant experience in my brain? I have to train my brain by using hypnosis, by giving over to exploring and uncovering things that were in my way and facing, like you said, those stories of, okay, what is the worst thing that can happen? Because for me, like I played small for so long because I was trying to control how other people saw me instead of just, like you said, this faith and trust of like, okay, this is what it is. And I know that this is my passion. This is what I'm supposed to do. And like, I'm going to release all these stories and I'm just going to show up. But like when you have things in your brain that are stopping you from doing that, right? And it's a lot of noise, right? Hypnosis is actually, if it's done in a therapeutic way, an excellent practice of exercising positive reinforcement or reprogramming with neuroplasticity. There's all this research about it, which is different though from the kind of hypnosis that you do. You do a bit more stage performance hypnosis. Now, I've always been curious, like when I'm practicing that for my own well-being, I have to be like super relaxed. Sometimes I could do it like if I'm walking or if I'm driving or something, if I'm driving, just to like have my brain in like a different receiving state so that the information still goes in and might not be thinking about it directly. But like, I don't know, like if I'm on stage in front of like 1,000 people, yeah, we train as actors to be like in the present moment and as singers just to be channeling. But when you have like kind of Joe Schmo from wherever coming up on stage and they need to be in a relaxed enough state or willing at least to take in the information that you're giving them, like what are some, I mean, clearly you mentioned earlier, like that sometimes that's really hard because they're just not willing to receive it, or you might not be, I think there's a rhythm to it as well. Like if you let them drag for too long, they might wander. Like there's all these things to it. What is like, as far as like a successful person, what do you think as a person being hypnotized on a stage? Like what are good factors that make a person that like actually like commits and allows themselves to have the experience? Like, in your like many experiences of hypnotizing people.
I mean, it really just does come down to that openness where hypnosis is a voluntary state. It's not like the movies where I just snap and anybody will fall asleep instantly, but it's more just getting people into that state where they're, like you said, willing to sort of receive it and be open to that process. I make the joke at the beginning of my shows where I say, as a hypnotist, I am sort of the guide or the facilitator or the instructor for the process. I'll say the right words at the right order at the right time to help you experience this state of hypnosis. And if you follow the instructions, then it'll work and you'll get hypnotized. If you don't, then as DJ Khaled would say, you played yourself. Nothing is going to happen. It's not going to work. So that's sort of the biggest factor, is that willingness to have that experience. But the fun thing is, like you mentioned, that's sort of the way that our minds naturally work, and our brains are wired to experience what we believe. The fun part about hypnosis for me is that there's still so much of the psychology that we don't understand, right? As a hypnotist, I sort of know what works, but I still don't fully know why it works. And nobody does, because we're still just in such an infancy of understanding neuropsychology and the way that the brain works. And there are all these things like placebo, for example. It's very similar to hypnosis, right? We have an experience that is not factually true and yet is experienced as if it is. You take a sugar pill and you get better. You take saline water solution and you get better. Why? There's nothing scientifically that would mean that that saline or that sugar should or does help you get better, and yet it does. And we understand conceptually that it's the belief in that medicine, it's the belief in that pill and that injection and that placebo that helps you to get better. So we understand that it works, but we don't know why or how it works. We still don't know enough about the brain to understand what is happening within the brain or the mind that causes that effect. And so hypnosis is that same sort of effect. It's the belief becomes the experience. It just is taken to a much higher extreme than a simple placebo, but it's having people experience something, whether it's fun or silly on stage, like I'm hypnotizing them to think that they forgot their name, they think that they can't see me and I'm invisible, they literally hallucinate that I'm their favorite celebrity and are freaking out because, oh my gosh, Beyonce is here, or whatever it might be. Or whether it is something like the things we talked about earlier about the positive benefits of it, of sort of being aware of the thoughts and the power they have over you and limiting the way that your brain is facilitating this experience of anxiety and turning it into confidence, or understanding that these worst case outcomes, like I was talking about earlier, are not actually going to be your reality. And yet when we hypnotize ourselves to focus only on the bad, only on the negative, that's just what's playing at the forefront of our mind. We're allowing those thoughts to hypnotize us and allowing that belief to become our experience. And that's the fascinating thing about anxiety or fear, is we are experiencing not the fear itself, but our belief about the fear, right? Sort of when you walk into like a dark room, for example, and you sort of get this scary feeling of what's going to happen, or if you're walking down a dark alley, nothing actually jumps out at you, but you still get the goosebumps, or you still feel scared, or your heart starts racing. Nothing has happened, but your mind has created this experience, and that experience has translated into becoming a physical experience that you've literally embodied. So we are experiencing our thoughts physically, and yet that can be experienced either to our benefit or our detriment. If we're focusing all on these negative thoughts and our anxiety and our worry and our fear and the worst case outcome, we experience it physically. But if we're focusing on our possibilities instead of the fact that we still can succeed, or the fact that we have to put ourselves out there, or focusing on the good, right? You'll find what you look for. What's wrong is always available, but so is what's right. And this idea that I always like to tell people is that, when you argue for your possibilities, or rather, when you argue for your limitations, you get to keep those limitations. But when you argue for your possibilities, you get to create those possibilities. So it just comes down to what ideas or what thoughts are we choosing to hold in our mind, choosing to focus on. We can't stop the thoughts from coming into our mind. Again, we still don't know why we think or where those thoughts come from. You can't stop yourself from thinking. If you try to stop yourself from thinking, you'll think about how you could stop yourself from thinking, and the thoughts just happen, right? But we can't stop the thoughts from coming, but we can always choose which ones to dwell on, which ones to focus on, right? If I were to say, hey, the person listening to this episode right now, you are a pink elephant, you would be like, okay, that's stupid. I'm not going to focus on that idea. But if I said, hey, you're a nobody and you're a failure that's going to amount to nothing, you might be like, well, maybe that's true. No, it's just as untrue as the fact that you are a pink elephant. But why did you choose to focus or believe one more than the other? It was simply just a choice. And it may not have been a conscious choice where you actively said, I want to choose that one. Like anything, it's a habit that you have to start to force yourself to be able to do more consciously. But eventually, or ultimately, they're all still beliefs.
Yeah.
So what beliefs will you focus on? Which thoughts will you choose to dwell on? Because those thoughts that you choose to dwell on are the thoughts that hypnotize you into having the experience. It's this classic idea that your thoughts eventually become your beliefs eventually become your habits eventually become your choices, and your choices eventually become your life. But it all stems back to your thoughts. It all comes from the things that you are telling yourself, again, that aren't necessarily from you.
Yeah.
Your thoughts aren't from you. They just show up. We don't know where they come from. But it's that choice to say, this thought isn't true. I'm not going to focus on that thought. Or I'd rather latch on to this thought of encouragement or possibility rather than this other thought of negativity and limitation.
Right. Like adopting the things that are actually helpful for you. And it's interesting how you said, obviously we're kind of hypnotizing ourselves when we're playing something on loop, or if our anxiety is getting out of control, we're hypnotizing the anxiety to become a reality in a sense. But even in culturally, like in taking in information and not having discretion as to what you are taking in. So if you're a person that also watches a lot of really negatively charged things, like I like to read the news. I don't watch the news, but like the way that it's playing now is like so opinionated and dark, in my opinion, as far as the energy that is associated with it is so not healing and helpful, and so it's like, okay, and even
Yeah.
with social media in comparison, like how are we latching on? What are you going to choose when you see something? Are you going to latch on to, oh my God, this person is doing this thing, I wish that I was doing that thing, there's something wrong with me that I'm not, instead of, oh my God, look at what they could do, that means I can do it too, right? It's like, it's differentiating and having discretion, like I said, as to like what narrative are you going to choose.
And that's such a great example too, because if you think about it, everything that you see on the internet is true, right? Yeah, exactly. No, not even close. And yet, if you go into the internet or social media with that perspective of, I'm just going to believe everything that's on here, then that's not going to be good. Same thing with your mind. Everything that comes in your thought is not going to be true. In fact, it's usually not going to be true. But if you go in believing, well, the thought came from me, so it must be true, then you're going to be in for just as much of a bad time, if not worse, than if you believed everything on the internet, right? We understand that when we're on the internet, we have to use discretion, and we sort of have to not take everything for face value. And we have to ask ourselves, is this true? And how do I know that this is true? And we should take that same practice with our own thoughts. When a thought comes in our mind, ask ourselves, is this true? How do I know this is true? And even beyond, is this true? Is this helpful? There are a lot of things that are true on the internet that may not be helpful, right? If you spend all of your time watching and absorbing into all this negativity in the news, even if it's true and it actually happened, it's not good for your mental health just to be absorbed in all this negativity. Same thing with your mind. Even though some of these thoughts may be true, maybe your life isn't where you want it to be, and maybe that is true. But is it helpful to dwell on that? Maybe not, right? Dwell on where you want to be instead of where you are right now. So that was a great example, sort of a fun analogy to use, that it's a similar experience to navigating the internet, to navigating our own thoughts. And not everything is going to be true or helpful, but it's finding the things that are both that will make our experience positive. And that was an interesting phase of the pandemic, similar to your experience, where it sort of forced me to stop and reflect and think about where I want to go. And was really in this phase of, well, where am I trying to go, and what does success look like? And I think that was a big question that sort of helped me to have a shift during that sort of weird break during the pandemic was, well, what is that success to me? Success is not an outcome. It's not reaching a certain amount of followers, because if I get that, I just want to get more followers. It's not reaching a certain amount of income, because if I get that, I just want to get more income. There is always going to be another level or a higher level, but success is not the journey. It's the destination, right? It's such a cheesy, cliche quote, but that doesn't make it any less true. It's not about trying to get to the destination as fast as possible. It's about enjoying the process of getting there. If you think about taking a hike, for example, if you want to climb a mountain and it's a nice, enjoyable 5-hour hike, if you had the opportunity just to teleport to the top, would you do it? No, even though you're trying to get to the top, the point is not to get to the top as soon as possible. You get to the top and you enjoy the view for 10, 15 minutes, and then what do? You take another journey back down the mountain, right? Whenever we reach a goal, it feels good in the moment, but then we always move on to what's next. And so if we're constantly pushing towards these big goals and these big success items, we're never going to be happy, because that's not true success. And we're never satisfied, because there's always something more. So sort of, I guess, the last thing that I would leave the listeners or the people that have made it this far through the episode is ask yourself, what is that experience of success to you? Success is that journey. So maybe you're not where you want to be, but how can you not only figure out getting to where you want to be, but enjoying that process of getting there? Even if it takes you a little bit longer, or even if it's a little bit slower, that process is going to be a lot more worth it because you're happier during that process, right? And life is short. It's not about being the most successful or the most famous, because eventually we all die and we are all long forgotten. I made this TikTok a couple days ago where I basically said something along the lines of, in the year, 2132 or even 3022, 1,000 years in the future.
Yeah, I think it was like
Yeah.
3025 or something
3022,
far
1,000
away.
years later, nobody is going to remember any of us, right? How many of us can name people that lived in 1022, 1,000 years ago? We might have a few people in the history books, but even those people that we remember their name, how much do we really know about their life and the way that we lived? Very little. And life is way different than it was 1,000 years ago, and that progress has been even faster in the course of history. And so in even just 100 years, let alone 1,000 years, most of us will be long forgotten. And that's fine. We'll be dead. We won't care about it, right? But life is short. And so it's about enjoying that experience while we have it, pursuing what success is to us. Somebody else's definition of success could be your definition of failure, or vice versa. Define what success means to you. Go after that, pursue that, and make the most of the one life you get.
Yeah. Enjoy your joy. That's one of my, when we're talking about confidence things and things that you do for yourself, I have these like little rhyme things that I'll do to like kind of, again, train my brain for happiness. But one of them is like, I'm entitled to my own joy,
Absolutely.
And that's, so listeners, go have a good, joyful day. But like, we're here to have fun. Like, who gives a shit about all these like the narratives of like, this is what this means. It's your life. Like, you get to decide what that means. So yeah, go have a joyful day. I love that word. Joy's a beautiful thing.
Wow, I don't know about you, but it's so cool to hear about how confidence is a legitimately buildable skill, like that you could practice and get better at. It's so cool. And it's so awesome to hear from someone who's like actually done it. I hope you, the listener, are feeling thoroughly refreshed and energized by this great conversation. If you or someone you know would make a great addition to this podcast and has pursued multiple career paths or interests, you can always email us at jackofalltradespodcast2020@gmail.com. Lol, I made this in 2020, so that's why the email is that. But again, that is, the email is jackofalltradespodcast2020@gmail.com. We love hearing from our audience. And don't forget to leave a 5-star rating and review. That helps us get our episodes out to more and more people. So until next time, I hope you have an awesome week. Talk to you later.